Welcome to another episode of In the Know, keeping you informed of what you need to know to keep your fleet moving. In this episode, we'll cover the Safety Measurement System, or SMS system, that provides the framework for enforcement agencies and carriers to track and measure the safety and performance of carriers and drivers. This series is brought to you by WhipAround, the easiest way to manage your fleet inspections, DVIRs, and maintenance compliance, with simple software to keep you in the know about the important information you need to reduce costs and improve the safety, compliance, and performance of your assets. Visit whiparound.com to learn more. In our previous video, we covered some of the key players and agencies in the U.S. transport sector. In this video, we'll cover the system that sits at the core of policing the regulations, FMCSRs, defined by the FMCSA. What is the CSA? Standing for Compliance, Safety, and Accountability, it is the key initiative of the FMCSA that holds drivers and carriers accountable for safety and compliance. As a part of the CSA initiative sits the Safety Measurement System, or SMS for short. This is the framework as to which carriers and drivers are monitored and measured for unsafe or risky behavior, and sets out who the prioritization system for interventions from the authorities, most commonly audits from the federal investigators, which can make even a seasoned pro sweat if you aren't prepared. The SMS system covers 7 behavior analysis and safety measurement categories, or basics, that wrap around all the elements of a carrier's operation that might have an impact on the safety of drivers or other road users. These basic categories are unsafe driving, hours of service compliance, commonly referred to as being focused on your ELD logs, controlled substances and alcohol. This is drivers being under the influence on the job. Driver fitness covers driver medicals and licensing. Crash indicator relates to the frequency of accidents a carrier or driver is involved in. Vehicle maintenance. This is a critical basic category with a heavy weighting on compliance. Within each category, different violations have different levels of severity. Without making things too confusing in this video, there is an equation that pairs time since last violation and severity of a particular breach to spit out a points score that adds up every time you are caught breaking the rules. Some are more serious than others, with drivers being heavily penalized for unsafe behavior to a large extent, and carriers heavily penalized for allowing unsafe or poorly maintained vehicles on the roads. So how do the agencies police this system on a day-to-day basis? Well, there are several ways they do this. The first is roadside inspections. You would have seen the lines of trucks being diverted in wait stations on the side of highways to be inspected by enforcement officers. This is where they check the vehicle and the driver credentials and issue any violations should they find anything out of line. In 2019, there was 3.5 million inspections and 5.7 million violations found from these inspections. These violations then go back to the SMS system and begin to add up against the carrier's name. The higher the score, the worse the life gets for the carrier. The majority of the time, these are conducted by federal agents. Investigations are carried out in 2 ways. Either on-site, when they physically show up to your site and request information and records on specific vehicles, drivers, or both. Or they can conduct this remotely or off-site, through a request of information and documentation, usually required to be provided within 48 hours. Off-site audits are becoming more common, particularly since COVID-19, but I think the FMCSA is seeing this as a more cost-effective way to conduct the investigations, and no doubt will enable them to conduct even more. Not only do investigators dig deeper on violations incurred out on the roads, but the results of the audit will also be recorded against your SMS score for future prioritization. So, it pays to be prepared. Carriers can track where they stand, with data being updated every month with the latest scores. The SMS Portal gives an easy view of trends and data to point towards how they are performing and if they are at risk for an intervention, which could be as light as a letter or as serious as an on-site audit. Each basic category has a threshold that will most likely trigger an intervention. So if your score passes this point for any given category, expect a knock at your door, or in 2020 and beyond, a call or an email from an agent. carriers should keep an eye on these fairly regularly to ensure that they can take corrective action if they are getting into a risky position. The quickest ways to improve your score is to challenge the particular violation through the data queue system or start getting your maintenance pre-trips in order to ensure you don't get any more violations. The three categories of carrier for intervention thresholds are passenger carriers, hazardous materials, and general carriers. Within these, three main groups of basic hold different weightings for interventions. Unsafe driving, crash indicators, and hours of service compliance are the lowest threshold for an intervention, basically meaning these are the most sensitive. Vehicle maintenance, controlled substances and alcohol, and driver fitness come in next. Hazard materials compliance sits at the top and only affects those carrying hazmat cargo. So an example here, if you are getting pinged at roadside inspections for vehicle issues and you are a passenger carrier, then if your SMS score is getting close to 65%, you will be getting a little worried. The SMS Portal provides a lot of information for carriers to pick through their data by vehicle and understand where they sit or how they have reached a certain SMS percentage. It will also give an indication of where investigators will focus should they get the call up. The Vehicle Maintenance Basic is one of the most important and most heavily policed basic categories. Over 20% of violations within this basic result in out-of-service orders on vehicles, compared to a much lower 5 or 6% in other categories. Vehicle maintenance not only affects compliance, but also your ability to run a successful business and maximize your fleet efficiency. To learn more about the Vehicle Maintenance Basic, tune into our next video where we will dive into this in more detail. Thank you for listening to another episode of In the Know. We hope this was clear and helpful. If you manage a fleet of vehicles and assets and know there must be a better way to manage maintenance and compliance than paper forms and whiteboards, then get over to whiparound.com to try it out. From DVIR, maintenance scheduling, and damage reporting, WhipAround is customizable to any asset process or need you have. Built on compliance with drivers, fleet managers, and mechanics in mind. Visit whiparound.com today. And before you go, please let us know what else you would like to see or hear from us in this series in the comments below.